Every diary you hear is bought with hours of life. Be among the first to preserve this library. Become a founding patron. Link in the description.
What he didn't know was that every breath he took in my car was measured, catalogued, filed under weaknesses.
The Stranger on the Road. Bath, Ohio. Interstate back roads, basements, late nights. Summer 1979. Chapter 1. The Road as a Trap. The road never sleeps. Even when the houses along it go dark, the asphalt keeps breathing. I knew every mile of Medina Line, every curve of Everett Road, every shoulder where a car could sit unnoticed. That summer, I drove them like a patrolman without a badge. Except I wasn't protecting anyone. I was mapping vulnerabilities. Hitchhikers were common in 1979. Gas prices were high, 78 cents a gallon, sometimes more. Kids were restless, soldiers between stations, runaways with nothing but a thumb pointed at the horizon and a story they didn't want to tell. The road fed me variables. Each figure standing with an outstretched arm was a question waiting to be solved. I didn't see them as people. I saw them as data points. What time of day did they appear? How heavy were their bags? Did they make eye contact with passing drivers, or did they stare at the ground in submission? Which ones looked like someone would miss them if they vanished? Which ones looked like blanks in the census, names that wouldn't echo, faces that wouldn't stick? I knew the public lie about hitchhiking, that it was dangerous because of predators behind the wheel. That was only half the truth. The real danger was the blind faith of the hitchhiker himself. He chose to step into a stranger's car. He offered himself up, like a moth circling a flame. Unaware the flame isn't just light, it burns. It consumes. That summer I stopped seeing roads as routes. They were funnels. Funnels leading the disposable, the fragile, the invisible, straight into my line of sight. The apartment smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. The refrigerator hummed day and night, a low pulse that never stopped. Sometimes I'd stand in the kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at the linoleum, listening to it drone on like a flat line. The neighbors fought through the walls. A woman's voice, shrill and cracking. A man's voice, low and mean. A baby crying somewhere down the hall. I didn't know their names. I didn't want to. At the plant, I clocked in, clocked out. Shift supervisor nodded when I passed. I nodded back. No one asked questions. No one looked too close. That was the beauty of it. I was unremarkable. Average height, average build, work boots scuffed but not filthy. Flannel shirt buttoned to the collar. I was wallpaper. I was furniture. But the basement was different. The basement was mine. The single bulb hung from a wire, casting a cone of yellow light that didn't quite reach the corners. The concrete floor was cold, even in July. I'd set up a chair in the center of the room, metal folding chair, the kind they used at church socials. I'd sit in it for hours, hands on my knees, staring at the opposite wall. There was nothing on the wall. That was the point. The emptiness made room for what I wanted to see. I kept a notebook on the workbench. Graph paper, neat columns, dates, times, descriptions, variables. I documented every hitchhiker I passed, every face I filed away. Some I circled, some I crossed out. Some I marked with asterisks, little stars that meant potential. The flask lived in the glove compartment, tucked under an old map of Ohio. Whiskey, cheap but clean. Just enough to smooth the edges, not enough to blur the focus. I sipped it when the thoughts got too loud, when the hunger pushed too hard against my ribs. It helped. Not much, but enough. I'd read somewhere that predators select for weakness. Wolves take the sick, the slow, the strays. That was nature. That was efficiency. I wasn't doing anything the world didn't already do. I was just more honest about it. The road delivered options. All I had to do was drive. Chapter 2. First Contact. It was late July when I saw him. Thin, maybe 18, maybe 20. Hard to tell with kids these days. Hair too long, stuck to his forehead with sweat. Backpack slung over one shoulder, looking too light to matter. His thumb jutted into the air like a flare, like a signal meant just for me. I passed him the first time, eyes in the rear view catching the outline of his body shrinking in the distance. I told myself, keep driving, but my hands didn't obey. I circled back, pulling a U-turn at the Sunoco station half a mile down. The engine rattled when I idled. I needed to get that looked at. Not now, though. Now I had something else to focus on. When I slowed, he jogged toward the car, grin already stretching across his face. That grin was infuriating. Too trusting, too eager, too stupid. He opened the door without hesitation, threw the backpack at his feet, and slid in like he belonged there. Like this was his car. Like I was doing him a favor he deserved. "Thanks, man," he said, voice rough from cigarettes or shouting. "Headed west. You going that way?" I nodded, one hand still on the wheel, the other brushing the flask hidden between the seats. He started talking before the door even closed properly. Stories about where he'd been, places he'd slept, people who'd given him rides. Names rolled off his tongue like they mattered. They didn't. Kevin in Akron, Marcy outside Toledo, some trucker whose rig smelled like piss and diesel. He laughed when he said it, like it was a funny story, like survival was supposed to be charming. I didn't answer much. He didn't notice. He drowned in his own chatter, filling the silence with noise that meant nothing. That was the first test. Silence. Most people can't survive it. They panic, scramble to fill the void, betray themselves with every word. He couldn't. His nails were chewed down to the quick, raw pink crescents where the skin met what was left of the nail. His knee bounced against the dashboard, a rhythmic thump that matched the rattle of the engine. Every twitch, every nervous glance was filed in the archive. Category, transient. Subcategory, replaceable. He wore a denim jacket with patches sewn onto the sleeves, some band I didn't recognize, a peace sign that looked ironic now. His jeans were stained at the knees, frayed at the hems. His sneakers were falling apart, sole peeling away from the canvas like a wound opening. He smelled like sweat and dirt and something else. Desperation, maybe. Fear dressed up as confidence. I asked him where he was from. He hesitated, just for a second. Then he said Michigan. No specifics, no town, no street, no family name. Just Michigan, like it was a country instead of a state. That told me everything. He was running. From what, I didn't care. What mattered was that he was unanchored, unmoored, drifting. He asked if I had any music. I said no. He said that was cool, that he liked the quiet sometimes. Liar. He couldn't stand the quiet. He kept talking, kept filling the space between us with words that meant nothing. I studied his reflection in the windshield, the way his eyes darted to the rear view, like he was checking to see if anyone was following us. The way his hand kept moving to the door handle, gripping it, releasing it, gripping it again. He was nervous. Good. Nervous people make mistakes. 20 minutes in, he asked if I had a cigarette. I said no. He nodded, disappointed but not surprised. He pulled a crumpled pack from his jacket pocket, shook one loose, lit it with a match. The sulfur smell filled the car, sharp and chemical. He cracked the window, blew smoke into the gap. The wind caught it, tore it apart, scattered it into nothing. He was already nothing. He just didn't know it yet. Chapter 3. Mask Maintenance. Masks are easy to maintain if you've practiced as long as I had. Smile when required. Nod occasionally. Mutter agreement at intervals. He thought I was listening. I wasn't. I was dissecting. He rambled about a girlfriend back home. Rachel, he said, though the name sounded rehearsed, like he'd picked it from a list. He said she was waiting for him, said they had plans. But his voice cracked when he said it, a hairline fracture in the lie. No one was waiting. That made him perfect. He talked about a job he didn't want, something in a factory, something that paid minimum wage and crushed your soul one shift at a time. He said he'd quit, walked out in the middle of a shift, told the foreman to shove it. He laughed when he said it, proud of himself, like rebellion was supposed to be noble. But his knee kept bouncing. His nails kept digging into his palms. He was terrified. Terrified of going back. Terrified of staying gone. I tested him in small ways. I asked where exactly he was headed. His answers shifted. Cleveland, maybe Chicago, maybe further. California, if he could get that far. A moving target. The kind no one pins down. The kind who disappears and no one files a report because there's no fixed address, no last known location, no breadcrumb trail to follow. The car itself became a laboratory. I used the windshield as a mirror, watching his reflection in the dash glow. His eyes darted too fast, scanning scenery that wasn't there. Cornfields blurred into gas stations, blurred into tree lines. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking for an exit. That told me he knew, somewhere deep in the animal part of his brain, that something was wrong. But he stayed. That's the thing about people. They override their instincts. They tell themselves they're being paranoid. They smile through the dread, convince themselves it's nothing. Because admitting danger means admitting they made a mistake. And no one wants to admit that. His hands fidgeted with the strap of his backpack, squeezing it as if it contained something valuable. It didn't. I'd watched him toss it in, light as air. Empty weight, like him. Maybe a change of clothes, maybe a toothbrush. Nothing that mattered. He asked what I did for work. I told him factory, same as him. He nodded, satisfied. We were the same, in his mind. Two working stiffs, two guys trying to make it. He thought he'd found kinship. He thought I was safe. What he didn't know was that every breath he took in my car was measured, catalogued, filed under weaknesses. What he didn't know was that I'd already decided. I reached for the flask, unscrewed the cap, took a sip. He glanced at it but didn't say anything, didn't judge. That was another test passed. He was complicit now, silent witness to my small transgression. If he wouldn't call out something as simple as drinking and driving, he wouldn't call out anything else. The road stretched ahead, empty and gray. No other cars, no witnesses. Just us and the asphalt and the endless hum of the engine. He thought he'd found kindness. He thought I was another man willing to help a stranger. What he didn't know was that every smile I gave him, every nod, every muttered agreement was part of the mask. And under the mask was something he couldn't see. Something patient. Something hungry. Chapter 4. The Calculation. 20 miles in, his words slowed. Fatigue set in. The adrenaline of the initial pickup had worn off, and now his body remembered it was tired. His eyelids drooped. His head tilted toward the window, forehead almost touching the glass. Silence stretched between us, and that's when my arithmetic sharpened. I calculated options. One turn off the main road into the woods. One quick stop in a field. One order for him to step out, something casual, need to check the tire, need to take a piss. From chatter to panic in under a minute. I could see it unfold frame by frame, a film reel playing in my mind. I pictured him cataloged. Specimen, hitchhiker. Condition, transient. Replaceability, high. The logic was flawless. He had admitted no one was waiting. Rachel was fiction, a phantom girlfriend conjured to make himself seem less pathetic. He had no timeline, no fixed plan. California was a dream, not a destination. He was drifting, waiting for something to happen to him. If he vanished, the road itself would absorb him. Runaway, dropout. Another statistic in a decade full of statistics. The 70s chewed people up. No one would notice one more. The hunger rose in me. Not for flesh, not for sex, not yet. Hunger for preservation. Hunger to freeze his authenticity the moment the mask slipped and fear took over. That moment would be more honest than anything he'd said. That moment would be real. I gripped the wheel tighter. The turnoff was a quarter-mile ahead. A dirt road that led into state forest land, acres of nothing but trees and silence. No houses, no street lights. No one to hear anything. My pulse hammered in my temples. My mouth went dry. I licked my lips, tasted salt and whiskey. The flask sat between us, cap still off, waiting. He shifted in his seat, oblivious. His hand moved to the door handle again, gripping it loosely, a reflex he didn't even notice. His body knew. His body was screaming at him to get out, but his mind overrode it, told him he was being ridiculous, told him to relax. I slowed the car. 25 miles per hour. 20. The turnoff approached, gravel crunching under the tires as I edged toward the shoulder. His eyes opened. He sat up straighter. "Everything okay?" he asked. I didn't answer. My hands were shaking now, just slightly, just enough that I had to clench the wheel harder to steady them. The turnoff was right there. Right there. All I had to do was turn. Chapter 5. The Restraint. I didn't turn. My teeth locked, jaw aching. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. The hunger clawed inside me, demanding release, demanding completion. But I kept driving. Straight. Past the turnoff. Past the moment. He settled back into his seat, relieved without knowing why. He thought it was nothing. He thought I'd just been slowing down for no reason. Maybe checking the road, maybe adjusting the radio that didn't work. He didn't know how close he'd been. I told myself restraint was part of the experiment, that not acting was as valuable as acting. Collectors know timing matters more than impulse. A specimen taken too early is ruined. Variables have to align. The moment has to be perfect. But the truth was uglier. I wasn't ready. Not yet. The thought of the act thrilled me, yes. The planning, the control, the moment of revelation when he'd finally understand what was happening. But the aftermath loomed like a shadow. The disposal, the cleanup, the risk of error. I wasn't certain I could carry it through without mistake. And mistakes got you caught. Mistakes got you on the news, got your face printed in the Akron Beacon Journal, got you labeled and filed and locked away. I wasn't going to be that stupid. So I drove on, past the turnoff, past the moment. My control felt like a cage. The hunger thrashed against it, but the cage held, for now. He started talking again, energy returning now that the strange silence had passed. He talked about California, about beaches he'd never seen, about starting over in a place where no one knew him. He talked like it was possible, like the world was full of second chances and clean slates. I let him talk. I didn't correct him. Let him have his fantasy. Let him think he was going somewhere. The Greyhound station appeared on the horizon, squat building with a flickering sign. He saw it and excited perked up, pointing like a kid spotting a landmark. "That's perfect, man. You can drop me there." I pulled into the lot, gravel crunching under the tires. The engine idled rough, coughing. I really needed to get that checked. He grabbed his backpack, opened the door, paused. "Thanks, man. Seriously, you're a lifesaver." I nodded, smiled. "No problem." He grinned, that same trusting, stupid grin, and slammed the door. He walked toward the station, backpack bouncing against his spine, disappearing into the blur of neon and fluorescent light. He thought he'd met kindness. He thought the world was still safe. The empty seat beside me glowed like an accusation. My fingers dug into the steering wheel until they hurt. I had let him go. A specimen delivered by the road, released back into the current. Uncollected, unpreserved. I sat there for 10 minutes, watching the station entrance, watching people come and go. He didn't come back out. Maybe he bought a ticket. Maybe he called Rachel, if she existed. Maybe he walked into the bathroom and never came out, collapsed in a stall from exhaustion, or hunger, or despair. I didn't care anymore. The moment was gone. I drove home. Chapter 6. Basement Reconstruction. The apartment was dark when I got back. The refrigerator hummed its endless hymn. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked straight to the basement door, opened it, descended. The bulb hummed when I pulled the chain. The circle of light enveloped me, familiar and cold. I sat in the metal chair, hands on my knees, staring at the empty chair across from me. I replayed every detail of him. The chewed nails, the darting eyes, the bouncing knee. The cracked voice when he mentioned Rachel. The way his hand kept moving to the door handle, gripping, releasing, gripping again. I saw him in the chair across from me, slouched, confused, asking why. I spoke to him in silence. Told him he was part of something bigger now. Told him he was preserved, even in absence. His image was filed, catalogued, stored in the archive of my mind where nothing decayed, nothing was lost. I imagined jars on the shelves, labels written in my neatest script. Transient, replaceable, invisible. His name didn't matter. He didn't have one that counted. He was already archived in the system, a data point among data points, a variable I'd measured and released. The notebook sat on the workbench. I opened it, found a blank page, wrote the date. July 28th, 1979. I wrote the time, the location, the description. Hair, brown, long. Eyes, hazel, darting. Build, thin, malnourished. Affect, nervous, talkative. Risk assessment, low. Outcome, released. I circled the entry, then I drew a line through it. Not a failure, a rehearsal. That night, I realized I didn't need his body to keep him. I could collect him without possession. The memory was preservation enough. But the fantasy felt hollow. The hunger wanted more than memory. It wanted proof. It wanted permanence. I sat in the basement until the sun came up, until the light through the high window turned the concrete floor gray. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. I had work to do. The next shift at the plant, I clocked in on time, nodded at the supervisor, kept my head down. No one noticed anything different. No one ever did. But at lunch, sitting in the break room with a bologna sandwich and a Coke, I thought about the hitchhiker. Wondered where he was now. Wondered if he'd made it to California. Wondered if he was already dead, overdosed in an alley or beaten in a dive bar, or just faded into the background noise of America. It didn't matter. He was gone. But the road would deliver again. Chapter 7. Foreshadowing. The summer didn't end. It stretched itself across every mile I drove, every night I spent in the basement, every swallow from the flask. August bled into September, but the heat didn't break. The air stayed thick, heavy, wet, the kind of heat that made you feel like drowning on dry land. I kept driving the routes, Medina Line, Everett Road, Route 18 stretching west toward nowhere. The hitchhikers kept appearing, one after another, thumbs out, faces blank. I cataloged them all. Some I circled, some I crossed out, some I marked with asterisks. The boy on the road had been Rehearsal. Not a loss, but a test. Proof that the system was ready. Proof that I could get close without losing control. Proof that the mask held. But Rehearsal only goes so far. Eventually, you have to perform. At night, in the basement, I refined the plan. Measured distances, calculated timelines, identified weak points in my method and eliminated them. The notebook filled with notes, diagrams, maps. I was meticulous. I was careful. I was ready. Next time, I won't turn away. Next time, the collector won't just imagine. He will preserve. Because once you've seen someone as replaceable, you can't see them as human anymore. And once you stop seeing people as human, the arithmetic only has one conclusion: follow through. The road would deliver again. I knew it the way I knew the refrigerator would hum, the way I knew the neighbors would fight, the way I knew the sun would rise gray and indifferent over the factory smokestacks. And when it did, the cage would open. I sat in the basement, staring at the empty chair, and I smiled. Not the mask smile, the one I showed the world. A real smile, the kind no one ever saw. The road was patient. So was I. The flask sat on the workbench, half empty. I unscrewed the cap, took a sip, let the burn settle in my chest. The bulb hummed overhead, casting its cone of yellow light. Outside, someone's dog barked. A car door slammed. Life continued, oblivious and ordinary. Down here, in the basement, I continued too. Different. Separate. Waiting. The notebook lay open to a blank page. I picked up the pen, wrote the date. September 12th, 1979. Under it, I wrote 2 words. Next time. I underlined them. Twice. Then I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and climbed the stairs. The refrigerator hummed. The neighbors fought. The baby cried. I stood in the kitchen, listening, and felt nothing. The road would deliver, and I would be ready.
Ah. I trust you enjoyed this glimpse into a most curious diary. If so, leave behind a small token of your delight with a like, and do consider joining our circle by subscribing. And remember, ring the little bell, and you shall be the very first to know when another diary or a fresh entry emerges from the shadows. And if a whisper stirs in your mind, a thought, a riddle, perhaps a name of someone whose secrets you would dare to uncover, leave it for me below. I read them one by one. And who knows, your wish may guide my hand to the very next diary I choose from my collection.